Okay. So hopefully this is going to work. I don't see. Invite guests. Okay, good morning. So I have no idea if this is actually working or not. It seems to be working. We have a couple of minutes for the others to join us. It's still just 28 minutes past. I have to confess, this is the first time that I'm doing a live stream via Restream Studio. So I had to install some software to do this. So hopefully it's going to work out. If you have any comments. Oh, good morning. It works. Okay. Thank you, Andre. Thank goodness for that. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I was up until about 2 o'clock last night trying to set all of this up. If you've never done live streaming before, on first impression, it can look very, very easy. You know, when I was working at Deloitte, I would just turn on the computer. I could go into a Zoom call or a Teams call with hundreds of people, and I didn't think anything of it. Turns out when you try and do this yourself, it's extremely difficult. At least it's difficult for me. I'm not very technical. So that's a good sign. Since Andre saw the chat function, it means that while unfortunately you can't speak to me in audio like we could do in a Zoom or a Teams call, it means you can put comments or questions into the chat function. So again, please don't be shy. Your comments or thoughts, if you disagree, I think that's also extremely interesting to share in the chat function. And this recording, it's being recorded. This is going out live now from Prague, here in the Czech Republic. And afterwards, it'll be recorded, and I'll leave this on the YouTube channel. If I can edit it and add some subtitles, I will, maybe a little bit more branding. But for now, I think this is good, and it's live, so you can ask different questions. All right, I see it's already past, so I think we can basically begin. So perhaps to start with, for those of us who don't know me, my name is John James. I'll give a very brief introduction. I'm originally from Scotland, and I have about 20 years experience in the legal services industry. First, I was working with DLA Piper over in Russia for about 8 years. After that, I created my own company. You can see Nichedonia. You can check out the website. We have it in something like 30 or 40 languages. And what I do is I fly around all over the world, and I help law firms improve revenues to make more money. So basically how to improve the commercial skills of the lawyers and partners. And it won't come as any surprise to you to know that in your country, like basically all of the countries in the world, this is something which isn't taught to lawyers. You go to law school, you study lots of legal activity, legal content, and then somehow you're expected, when you join a B2B legal consultancy, somehow you're expected over the years to grasp sales skills, to develop commercial skills. And to be honest, it's not everybody's cup of tea. And not everybody knows how to do it. How do you find new clients? How do you develop ex-clients? So that's my kind of thing. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me, jjmcveigh@nichedonia.com. Be sure to subscribe, actually, to the YouTube channel. I discovered that it's possible to limit live streams only to people who have subscribed. And so that's what I'm going to do in future. It's a very good thing for me to have more subscribers on the channel, because then it's possible to understand who the audience is and to grow these different metrics. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. For the last 3 years, during the pandemic, I couldn't travel a lot because of because of the pandemic. So I was in charge of business development for Deloitte Legal for all of Central and Eastern Europe. So I was covering 19 countries. And again, my goal was to help the partners and the lawyers develop current clients, find new clients, and so on. Fortunately, although Deloitte is a very nice company, I managed to leave at the end of 2022. 3 years was quite enough. And now I'm independent again. So I'm working with all of the different law firms. I'm in 1 or 2 countries every day. Yeah. Okay, so let me see if I can change the slides. And guys, you are more than welcome to multitask. To be honest, this is a 1-hour lecture. This isn't my favorite type of presentation or training because it's not interactive. And I understand that 1-hour lecture can be extremely boring. So please have a coffee, work on your emails or your memorandum. You can have me chatting in the background. And again, make it more interesting. Ask some questions. If you're one of the very lucky lawyers who has been on my training courses and you know something about sales writing, then ask more sophisticated questions. That's totally appropriate. Okay, so today's topic, which we're going to look at, and as I advertised in LinkedIn, is called Sales Writing for Lawyers, the Persuasive Email. I've written at least a couple of dozen textbooks about legal business development. And I have to confess, one of my very favorites is sales writing. So why do I like sales writing? I love sales writing because this is something which is actually in your comfort zone. This isn't scary for you as a lawyer. We do writing all the time. Our job is writing. We do memoranda and emails, sometimes articles, pitches. There's nothing scary for us in writing. But your problem is, let me provoke you a little bit. Your problem is you've done years of legal writing and informational writing. It doesn't mean you have any idea how to do sales writing. If I'm your potential client, how do you email me and persuade me to have a meeting with you? Quite simply. Or how do you persuade me to buy a legal product or a solution? Most lawyers have never studied this. They have no idea what they're doing. And to be horribly blunt with you, they do it very wrong. The good news is, over the 20 years that I've been working with partners and law firms, and one of the topics has been sales writing, I've noticed a very common number of mistakes across all of the different countries. I've worked with lawyers and partners in about 70 countries now, about 400 different law firms. So the good news is I see the common mistakes and I've written books about it. So that's some of the content which I'm going to share with you today. And in today's session, let me change the slide. Aha. Okay. Yeah. If you would like a copy of the slides which I'm sharing with you today are simply visual. They don't have the text content because I'm going to talk to you. But if you want a copy of the slides, you drop me an email to jjmcveigh@nichedonia.com. I'll send you the full slides. There are 32 key concepts which I'm going to share with you today. Each of them has a pictogram so that you can learn this into visual associative memory. And each of those pictogram slides has a hidden slide, which I'm not showing you just now, with a 1-paragraph description of the key concept. So if you want a copy of these slides, drop me an email and I'll send it to you. And in the slides, I include some previous live streams which we've done in the last month. So if you get these slides, you can click on these hyperlinks. There's the 36 Rules of Legal Writing. It's based on one of my books about legal writing. There's another one on grammar. Only, it sounds terrible, but 1 hour just about commas. So commas are nasty little creatures. You have to be very careful with commas. So there's a live stream there. You can see it on the YouTube channel. And of course, we have the early morning show every Thursday morning from 8:30 to 9:30 Central European time. Basically, this time slot, I do a 1-hour, well, I do a 30-minute lecture, and then there's a 30-minute Q&A session because we do this in teams. So again, that's free. If you're not already subscribed to the early morning show, you're more than welcome to join that as well. And the next broadcast is tomorrow morning. Okay, so like I mentioned, today there's going to be 32 key concepts. And this is about how to write a persuasive email. This is how to convince a current client or an ex-client or a new client about what to do. You're going to be bossy. You're going to have a lawyer-driven relationship. You're going to tell the reader what to do, and hopefully they're going to do it. And this presentation, this live stream today, it'll kind of go in a chronological order. From the start of the email, when we begin with the salutation, or even before that, all through the different parts of the email, to the ending, to the conclusion. And I'll include different elements that I recommend are best practices. An element basically means a sentence. So in good legal writing, like in good sales writing, it has to be understood. Quite simple, really. You should be writing, this is the concept, you should be writing in plain English. The best legal writing doesn't sound like legal writing. The best lawyer doesn't sound like a lawyer. You mustn't copy the movies. So you can see some crazy British or American movies, and you have the lawyers, and they're speaking this weird, wonderful language, which we call legalese. Lots of archaisms, Latinisms, strange grammatical structures. No, that's really not appropriate. 21st century legal writing, 21st century legal English is understandable for the common man. It needs to be understood by a normal businessman, a non-legal specialist. So this means no Latinisms at all, no etc. and IE even. No, you got to put everything into plain English. It means no archaisms. So all of those horrible words like heretofore, henceforeunder, thence after, no, archaisms, throw them away. Even shall, you shouldn't be using shall. Party A shall pay party B. Catastrophic, totally wrong. Don't do it. Yes, I know you're going to tell me that you see British and American lawyers doing this. It's archaic. You shouldn't be using that. Instead of using shall, you can be using present simple, future simple, or to be to. So the idea is plain English. This English should be understood by a non-specialist. I remember when I was, good morning, Samson. I remember when I was a boy, I saw my mama and my papa sitting at the table reading some contract. And they had to have a pencil, and it took two of them looking at that contract, underlining things, reformulating the sentences, trying to translate it. This is ridiculous. If a person is signing a contract, they're getting into some kind of legal liability. It's good if they understand what they're doing. So, plain English. No archaisms, no Latinisms, no formalisms, no legal jargon, no slang. Should be understood by the non-specialist. And of course, in terms of how you write the English, I explained this on one of my previous broadcasts, the 36 rules of legal writing. So you can see that on our lecture. There are 36 rules which I discovered over the years. You can see some of the pictograms on here, such as the KISS rule, keep it simple, silly. The nye rule, meaning you shouldn't be using double negatives. The UOU rule of passive voice means basically just don't use passive voice. So this kind of corresponds to plain English. You need to have simple, understandable language. And there are 36 rules in legal writing that you should follow. There are two things that we can do here, because this goes a little bit beyond the scope of today's live stream. One, if you're interested, view that live stream on the YouTube channel. It's an hour. Two, drop me an email. I'll send you my book, The 36 Rules of Legal Writing. I think that's a couple of things. So what I mean to say is, beyond plain English, you need to follow a number of rules, such as subject, verb, object. Don't start messing around with the order of subjects, verbs, and objects in English. In some languages, like Slavic languages, I speak fluent Russian. In Russian, you can do that. Good for you. In English, don't. So that's the second concept for today. Not only should you have plain English, but you should be following the rules of simple, clear, understandable English. And this also means, this is the other live stream, another 1 hour about it, regarding commas. Oh my gosh. You have to be so careful with commas. Commas are just awful. In English, commas are extremely dangerous. So again, a little advertising. There is a 1-hour broadcast about commas on my YouTube channel. You can look at that. And I have a paper about the rules of commas. For today's session, however, on the persuasive email, my advice regarding commas would be, 1, make sure you have short, simple sentences. You do not want to have run-on sentences, which lawyers like to do. Talk, 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 comma. Talk, 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 comma. No, God, don't do that. Short, simple sentences, and only be using the commas if you're 100% sure what you're doing. I can tell you another secret, actually. When I was doing legal writing training, I even started this back at DLA Piper. I was doing it in all of these countries. The very worst lawyers, in terms of the punctuation specifically, were the British and the American lawyers. A lot of the British and American lawyers had no clue what they were doing with commas, for example. So don't assume just because you're writing with a native speaker that they understand what they're doing. It's a good chance that they might not, and especially when it comes to commas. So be very careful with the commas. Now, when you're going to send a persuasive email to a recipient, and it doesn't matter really if it's a current client or an ex-client or a new client, your subject line is extremely important. This is the same rule for when we do PowerPoint presentations or when you write articles or when you send an email. Your headline has to be interesting and to catch the interest of the reader. It's incredible how many emails are sent from lawyers to prospects. Prospect means a potential client, which have extremely boring, dull, legalistic, formal subjects. That's not good. Your subject line should be like the headline of a newspaper article. You don't want to slip into the area of clickbait because that's going to make you look cheap and kind of silly. But you can make your subject line interesting. For example, if you put somebody's name into the subject line, if you wrote an email to me, so my name is John James, if you put the name John or James into the subject line, that would really catch my eye when I'm looking down my inbox because I have a strong visual association with my own name. So that's one thing you can do. In your subject line, it could be a question. Your question as a subject line would be a teaser. It makes a person think, what on earth is that about? So they're more likely to open it. Your subject line could be the value proposition. So rather than say a very dull subject line, which I would see on a newsletter, for example, changes to regulations ABC on tax law in Montenegro, who cares? I'm going to just delete that. That sounds awful. I would reformulate that into some kind of value proposition subject line. How to gain the best opportunities for VAT refunds via the new tax changes in Montenegro. So at least then I'm thinking, okay, there's something I can get from this. So put a little bit of thought into your headline. If you're doing an article or a PowerPoint or giving a speech or sending an email, it really does make a bit of difference if you have a good subject line. So many lawyers basically don't bother with this. The biggest mistake that we can make in our persuasive email, I call the Tolstoy mistake. And this just means to be writing far too much. This is the most common mistake that lawyers make in their legal writing, and it's absolutely catastrophic in sales writing as well. Writing, like Mr. Tolstoy, 1 sentence per page. This is a very bad idea. And if you have 1 sentence per page, you're going to have a handful of commas that you scatter across that page. Not a good idea. Don't write like Mr. Tolstoy. The best persuasive email is concise. The shorter, the better. I would even say that the best pitch in sales writing, when you're proposing something, might be a micro pitch. 1 single sentence that you pitch to a current or next client. The Americans, of course, they researched this and they discovered the longer the email, the longer the response time. The longer the email, the more likely there is no response. The longer the email, the less the conversion ratio. Be concise. Avoid the Tolstoy mistake. And one way to do this is to apply the 1 ruble rule. When you have written the first version of your email, you try to keep it as concise as possible. You then count how many words are in that email. For every word, you have to pay 1 ruble. I developed this when I was living in Russia. So I lived in Russia since I was 18. For basically half my life, I was in Russia. If you don't like using Russia as an example, let's not get political, change the currency. We can call this the 1 hryvnia rule, the 1 pound rule, whatever you want. But the idea is for each word, you have to pay a unit of currency. So your job to avoid the Tolstoy mistake, and this will work in your native language, is to cut, to make it as concise as possible. It's very easy to make a 3, 4, 5 paragraph email. It's not that easy to make it concise into 1 paragraph. That's exactly what you got to do. This mistake you are making in your native language. So you can apply the 1 ruble there as well. And keep in mind, guys, that in sales writing, you're not limited only to doing articles or emails or newsletters and sending this in electronic format. You can do physical sales writing, postcard marketing. You can do a short email, write it into a postcard, like a birthday card or a Christmas card, send it by post, send it by courier. The recipient receives it and they read it. The advantage of postcard marketing, or mailshot as it's also called, is that it has a delivery rate of around 100%. It has a reception and read rate of around 100%, which isn't true for emails. And it has a higher response rate than sending electronic correspondence. So keep in mind postcard marketing, which can be highly personalized, especially if it's handwritten, or mailshot. You print your email, put it on branded paper, put it into an A4 envelope, send it over to them. Or you can even go to the extreme of doing a lumpy mail shot. So maybe you're going to send your persuasive email, and we're going to look at how to write that in a few minutes. And maybe you would send something with it, not simply a brochure or a business card or a CD, but you could send a book. You could send a box of donuts. You could send a gift. One of the things which I did was I created Nichedonia concept cards. So you can see on the screen here that we have these different pictographic representations of key ideas. So I created flashcards. I print off about 100 of these, put them into a box. This is something which we sell 100 euros a box, so they're not very cheap. But I can use this in my mail shot. So sometimes I would put this in a post, attach a letter to it, send it to a managing partner. And lumpy mail shot has an even higher response rate than sending a postcard or just an envelope. Yes, there are more costs involved, but keep in mind, if you sent off, if I was in a law firm and I sent off 20 of these, so the production cost is actually a few dozen euros. The postage is maybe a dozen more. I just need one mandate, one engagement to have a return on investment. The Europeans are actually kind of silly because a lot of the Europeans are not doing any kind of mail shot, postcard marketing, or lumpy mail shot. So that's a little digression from sales writing. It's also one of the channels that I would recommend, more effective than sending off our beloved emails. Now, please pay attention. This is probably the key idea from today's entire live stream. This is called the AIDA format, an AIDA pitch. This is the structure that I will be explaining for you today and that I would recommend that you use for your email. So it doesn't matter if it's electronic or by mail shot or by postcard, whatever. And AIDA is an acronym. You begin your email with a salutation. So, dear John. Then you have an awareness sentence, an interest sentence, a desire sentence, and an action sentence. Best regards, and your name. That's it. The simplest persuasive email consists of basically 4 sentences. But like every single word should be there for a reason, to avoid the Tolstoy mistake and following the 1 ruble rule, every single sentence is there for a reason as well. Every single element is there for a reason. There is nothing extra and there is no fluff. The diagram might look a little bit strange to you. The reason we have the diagram like this is that there's a thing called the iceberg model of needs. And your clients, the tip of the iceberg is what you're seeing. It's their explicit needs. Under the water, there are implicit needs that your client isn't telling you. And at the very bottom, there are unknown unknowns. Your client has some needs that they don't even know they have. For example, in 2023, 2024, there are going to be different European Union artificial intelligence regulations coming into force. And these will impact a lot of companies. Many companies have no idea that what they're doing, the algorithms they use, how they manipulate their data actually falls under these artificial intelligence regulations. They can't ask you for help because they don't know it's an issue. So what you have to do is you would send them an email and you would make them aware. So dear John, first sentence, please be aware that from 1st of January 2024, such and such artificial intelligence regulations come into force. Now I'm aware. I think to myself, so what? Who cares? Next sentence. This is important, John, because if you don't comply with this, you can be fined 10,000 euros for each violation. So now you've made me interested. I understand why I should care. Why is this important? Next, desire. Offer me something. For this reason, we have an AI compliance checklist. We can take a look at your existing operational systems, identify any exposure, let you know about it, and with your agreement, resolve the exposure so that you can sleep at night without any worries. Desire section is extremely important in persuasive email. You have to have something to offer. What is your product? What is your solution? Most lawyers, not just the Europeans, but around the planet, I saw this in South America, Southeast Asia, Africa, most lawyers still don't have any products or solutions to offer. They're still being reactive. It's very 20th century. So in your email, you have the salutation, dear John, awareness, interest, desire, offer me something, and then action. Absolutely critical. Last sentence, tell me what to do. Therefore, I would suggest we have a coffee together. How about Tuesday at 2:00? That's the action. So legal writing usually doesn't make you any money because what you do is you make someone aware of something, and if you've written it well, you make them interested, and then you stop. So nobody has an idea what they can actually buy, and they're not being told to do something. Sales writing goes 2 steps further. You make someone aware of something, you make them interested, you make them desire your solution, you show the advantages or benefits, the opportunities or threats of doing what you're proposing, and then you tell them what to do. You have a call to action. That's your last step. AIDA can be used for writing an email, or AIDA can be used for an article as well. You could have first paragraph awareness, second paragraph interest, then desire, then action. AIDA is absolutely fantastic. So at the very start of your AIDA, you can make a mistake. We have the salutation element. Never, in a persuasive email, never write somebody's name. So you should never be writing to me just saying John. Yes, I know you can see Americans do this, and sometimes British lawyers, they want to be cool, so they copy the Americans and they do the same thing. Don't do this. In some countries, this is considered not informal and friendly. It's considered abrupt and rude. So even if your client writes to you with your name, comma, don't do it. You should always be using dear. Dear John, or if it's more formal, dear Mr. McVeigh. If we become friendly, it could become hi, John. But you never go down to the level of just using the name in the salutation. So you can make a mistake at the very start of your email. Don't do that. If you're writing to a man in the salutation, writing to me, dear Mr. McVeigh. If you're writing to a woman, dear Ms. McVeigh. It's written MS and pronounced Ms. Miss and Mrs. are archaisms. They don't exist. This is 20th century writing. We don't want to do that. If it's a man, it's a Mr. If it's a woman, it's a Ms. Who cares if she's married or not? And There is a third option. I'm not suggesting that you actually use this, but I want you to know about it. It's pronounced mix, MX. In this case, we don't know if it's a man or a woman. And theoretically speaking, if you're writing, let's say, to a lawyer in New York called Smith, in the same way, Ms. Smith, you don't care if she's married or not. In a similar light, you shouldn't care if Smith is a man or a woman. So you could write, Dear Mix Smith. So this is nothing weird or strange. It's just being polite, like an analogy of using Ms. instead of Miss or Mrs. So if you see it, that's what you know it's about. I think the only other way that you can mess up the salutation would be, don't forget, if someone's a doctor or a professor, then you should be using that rather than Mr. or Ms. or Mix. Next, personalization. You should have a personalization sentence. I wouldn't recommend that you jump into an email and you simply say the salutation, Dear John, from the 1st of January, AI laws will change. So you're going from salutation straight into awareness. No, I would recommend always that you should have a personalization sentence. This is the equivalent of small talk in spoken English. Never, please, never write, I hope this email finds you well. That's absolutely awful. That's dreadful. It's cliche, it's cold, it's formalistic, it doesn't mean anything. That's not going to build your bond or your relationship with the client. So never use, I hope this email finds you well. You need to have something personal. You need to show that you know them, that you care about them, that you remember them. So you might say to me, Dear John, I hope you had a lovely time on Monday in Cyprus. So if you're friends with me on Instagram or LinkedIn, you might have seen on Monday I was with one wonderful law firm, Neocleos and Co. on Cyprus. So if you put that in your personalization, I know that you know something about me. You could say, Dear John, I hope you are doing well in Prague. That's okay. At least it shows that you know I live in Prague. So don't neglect the personalization element. It is very important to build social equity and rapport with your client. So you have salutation, then personalization. Next, when you're going to do the awareness part, the next element in your persuasive email, you could simply say, please be aware of that, and you tell me something. Or from the 1st of January, such and such a law will change. I'm aware. It's kind of boring, to be honest. It's not very exciting. A different way to do this could be to use the Duracell element. The Duracell element is one sentence which you are using to provoke somebody. You're telling them that black is white or white is black. You're telling them good is bad or bad is good. You're intentionally telling them something against expectations because it will hook their interest, and you want them to be interested and aware at the start of your email. So I could say, you could write, Dear John, Cyprus is absolutely not the best location from a tax perspective for corporate relocation in Europe. And I would be thinking, why? I actually heard that it was. You're telling me something which is against my expectation. You're provoking me. I want to disagree with you. And I'm about to disagree with you. But then further in the email, the next sentence, you justify what you're going to say. So the Duracell element is very good in public speaking, in emails, in articles. It's a provocation. Intentionally tell something against someone's belief because it's going to catch their interest and provoke them, and then you justify that. So it makes them pay attention. Also, in your awareness part of your persuasive email, you would be able to include something called Augies Element. So Augies Element, this was written by, I was doing a training some years ago in Macedonia, and one of the lawyers was called Ognjen, which means flame or fire in Slavic languages, and his name is Augie. So this is his element. So he came up with this idea. Augie's element would be a sentence like this. Despite the catastrophic upcoming changes to corporate law in our jurisdiction and the imminent liquidation of many entities, such as the ones that you hold, we know how to get through this tangle to reach the golden horizons and opportunities beyond, the wonderful chances that this brings to you. So what are you doing here? In Augies Element, you take any bad news and you put it as good news. You put a positive spin on what you're saying. Again, you're provoking something that someone thinks is bad. You're telling them it's good. And you drive the process. You tell them you have the answer. So Augies Element isn't just for one sentence at the start of the awareness part of your persuasive email. Augies Element is also about your legal writing and your sales writing in general. Always have positivity and always have proactivity. You know the answer. You're going to tell them what to do. You're going to have a lawyer-driven relationship to help the client to get to where they want to be going. When I was working in Russia, a lot of the British and American clients would get extremely annoyed with the Russian lawyers because the Russian lawyers would only answer emails, only answer questions. It was a client-driven relationship. And that's very, very bad. So you want to have a lawyer-driven relationship. You tell the client where to go. So we have salutation element. You've made them aware of something. Next, interest. You need to make them interested. Tell them the positive or the negative. Tell them the opportunity of the threat or the threat. Your first sentence is awareness. You then need to think to yourself, so what? And you answer that with the interest sentence. This is why you should care. This is why you should be interested. Because after that, in the desire section, and this is the heart of persuasive writing, and this is the most difficult part, so you need to pay attention here. You need to have a UVP, a unique value proposition. What is your big idea? What is the topic? What is the subject of this persuasive email? In the persuasive email, you're trying to pitch something. You're trying to sell something to your current client, to an ex-client, or a totally new client. You mustn't simply pitch and propose to them your excellent legal capability, because they might already have an in-house lawyer or be working with another law firm. So if you say all of those plain vanilla arguments, hey, I'm a lawyer, I have 10 years experience, I worked with foreign and local clients, I'm ranked in Chambers, Legal 500, we're a one-stop shop for your legal needs, blah, 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 blah. Not going to work because they're not aware of what it is that they can get from you. What can you offer? What's your big idea? So awareness, and then interest, and then desire. What are you offering? So your UVP should be a legal product or solution you can offer. For example, when I was at Deloitte until so for 3 years, from January 2020 to December 2022, this was something that I had to help a lot of the partners and the lawyers come up with. What can we offer? Across the 19 countries I was in charge of, across all of the different practice groups. A very nice one that we had in IT was ESOPs, Employee Share Ownership Plan. So we can write to CEOs and general directors, and we can say to them, hey, we can help you to do an ESOP. We can decrease staff turnover. We can increase morale. We can show you how to attract the best talent without paying crazy salaries. So we pitch this in an AIDA email. So you have your salutation, awareness, interest. In desire, we're showing the advantages and benefits of doing an ESOP. That's the legal product. So this would be a mixture of corporate law. I think there was a little bit of tax and IP thrown in there as well, some employment. Bundled that into an integrated holistic product, pitch it to them, and we got quite a lot of meetings. So an ESOP is an example of a UVP or a big idea. Another one would be an e-commerce health check. We can show you in e-commerce how to examine your setup because you boomed recently in the pandemic. Now there's a lot of risk and exposure because you grew too rapidly. So you have maybe not great compliance with GDPR and data protection. So we can show you the issues and how to prevent that. So these are 2 examples of good ideas. The UVP, the heart of your AIDA. What can you offer? Now, when it comes to creating the UVP for the desire section in your AIDA, you can either be market-driven. It means that you're going to write to the client or potential client because of something changing on the law. For example, artificial intelligence regulations under EU law. That would be a market-driven UVP. And that's usually what law firms do. Law firms do really silly things. All of the law firms wait for changes to happen in the law. And when the changes happen in the law, only then do they do sales writing and pitch to clients and say, hey, clients, these laws have changed. You've got to comply or you're going to be fined. This is a very bad idea because all of the law firms are doing this at the same time. These changes become commodified. There is price dumping. Not good. So a market-driven UVP is okay, especially if you're ahead of the curve, like the European Union artificial intelligence regulations. I personally think that wave of work in AI law is going to be bigger than the GDPR and data protection wave of 2018, 2019. So take first mover advantage. We see that there's a market-driven change coming. Make a market-driven UVP, put it into an AIDA, pitch it to your clients and your potential clients ahead of your competitors. However, what I really like is when you have a spontaneous UVP. This is the opposite of being market-driven. The ESOP, for example, or the e-commerce health check, neither of these were being created by us because of changes in Czech law on the market. Both of these existed already, but we were taking them as a commercial idea and pitching them to a specific industry, to specific key decision makers. By the way, I really recommend for you to buy Sales Navigator license on LinkedIn. This is absolutely fantastic for business development. I bought that myself. It's about 80 euros per person per month. If you have any questions on that, I can tell you more. So market-driven UVP is okay, but for your desire section, a spontaneous UVP is even better. And again, throughout your AIDA, you're asking "Ishto?" In Russian, this means so what? So we have awareness. So what? Therefore, interest. So what? Therefore, desire. So what? Therefore, action. You need to apply the so what test to every single sentence that you have in your persuasive email. You need to apply, if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, you need to apply the "Ishto?" the so what test as well, because a lot of slides are not necessary. A lot of concepts are repeated. So in the same way that you can do the 1 ruble rule to cut your email to avoid the Tolstoy mistake, you can also do the so what test to remove unnecessary repetition. Now, you have to be careful because a very common mistake that lawyers and partners make in the persuasive email, they've done the salutation, awareness, interest, desire, good. But then we like to show off a little bit and we can go into too much detail. We start talking too much about what we can do and how to do it. This is called a spoiler. If you go into great legal detail about how you will actually do your ESOP or your e-commerce health check, especially if you're writing to an in-house legal counsel, then they might just do this very same thing themselves. That's a spoiler and you don't get paid. So what you need to do, be careful in your public speaking, your presentations, your emails, your articles. Do not put all of your cards on the table and do spoilers. Put teasers. Say, we have the solution. It helps get these opportunities. It helps avoid these risks. But you don't tell them in great legal detail how to do it. Younger lawyers especially make this mistake in new client consultations. And sometimes new clients can be a little bit naughty. They can try and do phishing. Get free legal advisory. Don't fall for this. You shouldn't be giving free legal advice. What is free is not valued, is not respected. Don't do it. Say, for us to understand better your needs, we need to sign an engagement, and then we can go into much more detail, ask all of the background questions, and give you an answer, which is true. You shouldn't be doing free legal advisory. So be careful not to include spoilers in your sales writing. Include teasers. Now, you've done awareness, interest, desire. A very bad situation for you is going to be if the recipient of this email basically ignores you. And if they ignore you, you're going to have a dilemma because you have to then chase them. And this can waste your time. And how much chasing are you going to do? Are you going to call them? Are you going to send a second email, a third email? So there's one element that you can include, which is called the final element. So we do salutation, awareness, interest, desire, Next, you can slip in a final element. And it goes something like this. If you don't reply to this email by Friday, I will call you. The final element is a conditional sentence. The final element is you saying, if they don't respond to you, you're going to call them. Nobody wants to be called. So by including the final element, you increase the response rate of your email. Even if the response rate is more rejections, that's a good thing. It's better for you to be rejected than to have silence. If you're not comfortable making such a threat, and it is a threat, then you can make it a little bit fluffy. This is an exception to the 1 ruble rule. You could say something like a justified final element. Due to the busy period, for us to be able to complete this task for you on time, we need to begin as soon as possible. Therefore, if you don't get back to me by Friday, I'll give you a little call just to check if this might be interesting. You're still saying, if you don't answer, I will call you, but you're making it more fluffy, more polite. So that's the final element, which can be an exception to the 1 ruble rule, to not be blunt or abrupt. If you don't feel comfortable including such an element, don't include it. I've discovered that this increases the response rate by 3 times. Next, awareness, interest, desire, action. The last part of your persuasive email is the action part. This is called the CTA in American English, the call to action. At the very end, you tell the reader what to do next. My big recommendation for you would be, if you're doing a persuasive email to a current or an ex or a new client, and you want them to do something, probably the best CTA for you is to get a meeting. Now, a meeting, it could be 30 minutes like now on the computer. Of course, it's better if it's face-to-face. So your CTA sentence could be something like this. Therefore, I suggest we do lunch on Tuesday at 2 o'clock to discuss further. What do you think? That's it. You're telling them what to do. Your CTA could be different, though. It doesn't have to be a meeting. It could be, send me the contract, introduce this person, let me introduce one of my colleagues. That's a cross-sell. There are different types of CTA, but you are always bossy. You always drive the process. Awareness, interest, desire, action. You tell them what to do next. You want to have a lawyer-driven relationship. You never, never, never write something like, I remain at your disposal. Catastrophic. Please contact me if you have any questions. Terrible. I look forward to hearing from you. Just plain silly. Don't do these fluffy, useless sentences. Yes, they're polite, but it's a waste of time. You can be polite and drive the process. Tell them what to do. So probably awareness, interest, desire, action. You tell them the next step to take. However, you have to be careful, because if in your action element you said, let's do lunch on Tuesday at 2, maybe they're busy. In this case, you could do an XY close as your CTA, as your call to action. So this would be a sentence such as this. How about we do lunch on Tuesday at 2, or I could suggest coffee on Friday at 5. X or Y. When you do an XY close as part of your call to action, it gives them a choice between 2 options. There's more chance that they're going to be available on one of those dates. You must choose 2 non-consecutive days and 2 non-similar times. Maybe the start of the week they're busy. Maybe every lunchtime they're busy. So you want to increase your chances by having 2 non-consecutive days and 2 non-similar times. That's an XY close. An XY close has more chance, a higher rate of conversion than suggesting a single date or a time. And obviously, please, you must never suggest something like, when would be good for you to speak? Why would you do that? You then need to wait for them to come back to you. They might even consider not speaking to you and refusing. Never ask. You must tell. You must say. And rather than say one option, do an XY close. Now, of course, when your recipient receives this AIDA email, salutation, personalization, awareness, interest, desire, final element, call to action, That's driving them from being aware to being interested, to taking an action, to meeting with you. They might still be afraid. They might be afraid to make a decision because that carries a risk. People don't like to make decisions, especially purchase decisions. So what you want to do is include risk reversal. Risk reversal means you reverse any risks that they have. So what is the commitment that you're asking for? A 30-minute Teams call. Write that in your CTA. A quick coffee, a 30-minute coffee. Use the expression 30 minutes. That increases your chances the person will agree to speak to you. Nobody wants to sit with you for an hour to hear you pitching or selling something, and if not even longer. So when you're looking at the call to action part, think of risk reversal. Reassure them in the sentence that it's a free consultation. That decreases the risks. So for example, your call to action could be, taking into consideration risk reversal, how about we have a quick 30-minute coffee on Tuesday at 1 or Wednesday at 3. It will be my treat. And of course, this consultation will be absolutely free. That's for your interest. So you're reassuring them that it's a limited time, you're reassuring them that it's free, and you're doing an XY close. You can see that even I'm getting a little bit confused here in how to formulate that into one concise sentence. It's not so easy to speak it. It's easier when you've written it, and then you apply the 1 ruble rule and make it a nice, concise sentence. So keep in mind the concept of risk reversal. Then you say, best regards, and your name. Actually, by the way, guys, at the bottom of an email, in the same way that you should always use dear, and you shouldn't make the John, comma, mistake. At the end, always use best regards. Then nobody can be upset. Do not copy all of these weird and wonderful creations that native speakers would do. No, yours kindly, truly yours, tata for now, kiss kiss. Yours sincerely, yours faithfully. These are archaisms. Yours sincerely and yours faithfully should only be used in written physical mail shot. If you're sending this, like I mentioned, as a postcard marketing or lumpy mail shot or mail shot, you could use yours sincerely. That's when you know the person's name that you're writing to. Or you could use yours faithfully if you're writing to dear sir or dear madam. In fact, in the 21st century, you should never be writing to someone and not knowing their name. Therefore, you would never be using yours faithfully, even in a written mail shot. Okay, so best regards. You never use regards because that means that you're annoyed. That means you're not happy about something. And you could use kind or kindest regards 10% of the time. That means it's something very special, some kind of good news. So there are 3 endings. After your call to action, you can have kind regards or kindest regards. You can have best regards, or you can have regards. Regards, you use 1% of the time to show that you're not happy. Kindest regards, you use 9% of the time to show that you're very happy. And 90% of the time is just best regards. Then your name. However, you can add at the bottom here the PS element. PS looks unusual in sales writing and legal writing because it's more informal, and that's why you do it. It's to build the relationship with the client. And it's the last thing they read, so it's very powerful. In your PS, you could say, PS, please pay attention, for emphasis, and the reader will pay attention. PS, let me bring my good colleague to our lunch. So you're making a cross-sell in your PS. PS, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. So you're doing personalization in your PS. You're not going to add PS to every single email that you send, but you could for every 3rd or 4th. It's the last thing they read, and it adds personalization, and that's a good thing. Now, once you've sent that email, the clock starts ticking. If you don't get results within a month, basically forget it. The 1-month rule. You've got to strike while the iron is hot. You need to do your follow-up. If they're not responding to you, you're going to call, you're going to email. But after a month, you basically forget it. It's over. Someone might come back to you a year later, but they probably won't. So remember the 1-month rule. You need to be very systematic. If you're going to do an AIDA in email, you might really want to learn mail merge. This would mean that you can connect an Excel table of recipients to your Word document and send off maybe 10 or 20 or 100 AIDAs. This morning, I used Mail Merge to send out just under 1,000 emails to the members of the early morning show. You probably, if you're in my guest list, you received this email, and it would say, "Dear name, please remember the show is tomorrow. I hope you're doing well in country." So Mail Merge lets you do mass automated emails. I have a paper on this. If you're interested, email me, jjmcveigh@nicodonia.com, and I can share it with you. It's very useful. You can do A/B testing. If you do some AIDAs with one value proposition, do some other AIDAs with another value proposition, and you compare them. And whichever one is best, you then take that and continue with it. And then you can change another element. You change, let's say, the argument for interest. You do one version and another version, and you send them off. And the one that is best, you take that. So A/B testing is very good to evolve your AIDAs, to make them more and more effective, to increase the conversion ratio. Needless to say, almost no law firms are doing even A/B testing, because most law firms are not doing systematic proactive pitching, to tell you the honest truth. When you do your pitch, there's 4 outcomes of your email. The hire means someone says, "We'll take you." The fire, that gives you a rejection. And advance, they say, "Let's come back to this later, next week, next month," and that will become a hire or a fire. And of course, the one which I told you about, which we hate, is the continuation. So when you send your email, that's it. You can't just brush your hands and sit and wait. It isn't just going to be hires and fires. There will be some advances, so you need to deal with the follow-up. And the continuations, you need to follow up with as well. Continuations can be very annoying, these silences, because you should have, you never accept continuation. Never, never, never. It's not a good idea. You do not accept silence as the end of your pitching. So you do an email, you do a call, you do an email, you do a call. They're not answering you. Finally, according to your company follow-up policy, which you don't have, so you need to make one for yourself if your company doesn't have one, how much follow-up is too much? Finally, at the end, you've sent your persuasive email. You did a call after a week, they ignored you. You did another email, they ignored you. Another call, they ignored you. You send a nuclear option email. You change the continuation into a fire. You would write something like, "Dear client, I tried to reach you a few times regarding such and such a value proposition. We didn't manage to catch each other, so I guess this isn't important for you. Come back to me if this is relevant in future. Best regards." This is the nuclear option, because you're telling them you're not chasing them anymore, and you're not bluffing. You will stop chasing them, because then it becomes harassment. And the idea behind the nuclear option is either they continue to ignore you and you have changed that continuation into a fire and you move on, or quite often this nuclear option provokes responses and people do come back to you. A number of those responses are polite fires, but some of them will be hires and advances. So first concept, you create an AIDA email. It means you have a value proposition. You have something interesting to offer, and you send it out. Maybe you send it out to 1 or 2 or 3 current clients. Maybe you're going to send it out to 100 clients with a mail merge. Then, unfortunately, you're going to need to do the follow-up to the guys that don't answer you. This takes time and is annoying. But your conversion and your success by a persuasive email is actually 5 times, I've measured this, 5 times higher when you do systematic follow-up to the degree of nuclear option than if you just do an email and step back and do nothing, which is usually what lawyers would be doing. So that's the follow-up to nuclear option. This means you need to have a company follow-up policy. I think from about 400 law firms I've worked with, there's only maybe, I could count on one hand how many actually have a company follow-up policy. You really do need to do this. It protects you from becoming annoying, protects the client from being harassed, and it increases your sales and your revenues. People don't like to make decisions. It's not that they're ignoring you because the answer is no. It's that they're not answering you because they're thinking about it. And probably they're going to think about it too long and never make a purchase decision. So be pushy. Have a company follow-up policy to maximize the number of people who do convert. And be careful, because if I mentioned about spoilers, if you put too much information into your AIDA or into your article, not only might you not get paid, it could decrease the revenues that you would otherwise get for the law firm. So be careful. Sales writing, your articles and newsletters, your emails, if it's done badly, it might not only not generate sales, it can decrease sales. This is called cannibalization. This is another reason why you should be doing spoilers in your presentations and emails and articles. Okay. And my final advice here would be, I really do think that a lot of your newsletters are commercially useless, to be blunt. Yes, maybe it's good for our marketing or our publicity, but in terms of direct sales and generating revenues, the return on investment, the conversion ratio is usually conversion zero. My advice would be, and I upset lots of different marketing people by saying this, I would really recommend, you're going to have a bigger bang for your buck, generate more revenues by replacing newsletters, which are mass marketing, impersonal, and usually never read or deleted, with a mass AIDA pitch, mass personalized AIDA through mail merge with a call to action based on your value proposition. That's going to generate for you meetings. Your main metric of success is meetings, because a proportion of those meetings will then become mandates. Do not try to do an AIDA where you're pitching and trying to sell the product. Awareness, interest, desire, action. Don't try and make your action point being a purchase of the product or solution. Unfortunately, you're probably needing to take that intermediary step to get a face-to-face meeting with them. And then from the meeting, you'll get hopefully a mandate. Okay, good. So I'm running out of time here. It's 29 minutes past. If you found that interesting, good. If you want a copy of the slides, email me and I can send you the slides with the texts. And I mentioned throughout the presentation just now 2 or 3 different papers and expansions on some of the concepts here. So if you would like a nuclear option email, as an example, an AIDA email, if you've got some ideas about sales writing, contact me. Whatever you do, of course, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm going to limit future viewers only to those that are actually subscribed, and there will be some other broadcasts. For example, tomorrow we have the early morning show. We're doing cross-selling as the topic. If you're not on the guest list, drop me an email and I'll add you on the guest list. For this one, you do need to get an email invitation. So I think on that point, let's wrap up for today. I hope that wasn't too rushed. We covered 32 concepts, so there's going to be some food for thought. And again, I really would love to hear from you, even if it's just some thoughts, ideas, suggestions. I'm very responsive. Okay, so thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow for cross-selling at the same time. Thank you. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, and end this. Okay.